Hello students, welcome to the first chapter of your first PUC in physics. So the first chapter is physical world. Here we are going to discuss about the basic principles and the basics of physics. You all know that physics is a branch of science. So before we go and understand physics, we should first know what is science. So let's begin with science. The word science. Science is a word which does not actually belong to English. Now, yeah, it is there in the English dictionary. If you open there, you'll find the word science. But originally, science is a word which is from the other language, which is taken into English with some modification. So, science is a word which is derived from a Latin verb. Okay, it's from a Latin verb which is called scientia. Scientia is the word which was originally there in Latin, then taken into science. The word is taken into science, and the word is taken into English in the form of science. Scientia means to know. So science is all about getting to know, acquiring the knowledge. Okay. So how do we define science, or how do we uh, understand science? Science is a systematic attempt to understand a natural phenomena in as much detail and depth as possible. Okay, so we are going to understand a natural phenomena in as much detail and as depth as possible, and use the knowledge so gained to predict, control, and modify the phenomena. Okay, so here, as you can observe, science is a systematic attempt to understand a natural phenomenon. Let me take a simple natural phenomena of flow of water. So if I just observe it, that observe the phenomena of flow of water, I can see that the water always flows from uh, higher level to the lower level, or the height larger height to the lower level of ground, right? The water flows like that. It's a natural phenomena which we observe. And we can also observe that when certain obstacle is introduced, water tends to go in a different direction, right? Or if the obstacle is too much, then water stops flowing there. These are the natural phenomena that we can observe. So, after observing the phenomena, we gain some knowledge, right? That is what the knowledge that we gained. Water always flows from top to bottom, higher ground level to lower ground level, and we can store water if we have a uh, place where we have certain kind of pit and all, or the ground is bulk and all. So there we can store the water. This is the knowledge that we gained after observing it, and then we are going to use the knowledge so gained. So after observing, we'll gain the knowledge, and after gaining the knowledge, we are going to use that knowledge. Okay, where are we going to use that knowledge? We will use that knowledge to predict, control, and modify the phenomena. So now we can predict the phenomena. Say it rains too much, then we can predict that okay, water is going to flow too much in this area, right? We can predict it, and we can control it, right? Since we know the phenomena, we can divert the path of the water to the other ways using the knowledge that we have gained, or even we can control it by by building bridges, by building the dams to store water, to control the flow, right? So we are predicting the phenomena, we are controlling the phenomena, and also we can modify the phenomena, right? So yes, water will flow from in a certain path, but we can also provide it certain other paths like channels that we make and the drainage system that we have. All those things are the modified phenomena of same flow of water, right? So basically science is a systematic attempt to understand a natural phenomena in as much detail and depth as possible and use the knowledge so gained to predict, control, and modify the phenomena. Okay, that is about science. Now, whatever the example that I gave is a physical phenomena, but not necessary. It can also be a biological phenomena or a chemical phenomena, other things like growth of a plant. That's a natural phenomena, but we can observe it to predict the growth, to control the growth, and to modify the growth. Right? That is what is science. Now, moving ahead, let us go for our subject, physics. So, basically, the word physics is again doesn't belong to English. It is basically from a Greek word, okay, which is physica. The word physica from Greek is taken into English in the form of physics and is kept here. So, physics is derived from a Greek word which means that word physica means nature. So, in Greek there is a word which is called physica which means nature, and that word is taken into English in the form of physics. Okay, this is about the etymological meaning or the root of the words, where are the words science and physics from, and the definition of science. Okay. Okay, next. In physics, we have two basic thrusts or two thrust principles. What is a thrust basically? When I say thrust, you can take the example of rocket and understand. If the thrust is downwards, the rocket is pushed upwards, right? So it is the principle, here it is the principle, okay? The thrust is always something which decides the direction of motion of an object, right? If the thrust is in this direction, this chap is assuming that it's rocket kind of one, it will go in this direction, it will move in this direction. If the thrust is downwards like this, it will go upwards. If the thrust is like this, it will go upwards. So thrust decides the direction of motion. Similarly, here the two thrust principles decides the approach towards the subject or towards the phenomena that we observe. So when I take physics, we approach a phenomena in two different ways and understand it. The first approach or first thrust principle is unification. When I say unification, it is an attempt to understand or explain various natural phenomena using very few laws of physics. So, when I say various natural phenomena, let me take the example of falling of an object. If I leave this, it will fall down. Yes, we all know that. And this is not only applicable for a chalk piece. I take any object and leave it, it will fall downwards, or I should say towards the ground. So now that is one phenomena. The other phenomena is the rotation or the revolution of Earth around the sun, right? That is the other phenomena. And the revolution of moon around the Earth. Along with that, we also have many other phenomena like waterfall and many other things. All of them, whatever I just explained and took as an example, all those examples work on the basic principle of gravitational force, right? The basic law that works between all these phenomena is gravitational force or gravitational law, right? So this is one approach where we are going to explain various natural phenomena using few laws of physics. Okay, understood? Various phenomena, few laws. Okay, so that is the approach in unification principle. Various phenomena explained using few laws of physics. Okay, right. The next thrust principle in physics is reduction. So reduction is exactly the opposite way of that. So now, if I take an example of a phenomena like motion of a train, okay, engine of a train. So assume the engine train moving on its track. So it's one phenomena, not natural, obviously. Okay, so it's one phenomena, the motion of engine of a train going in certain direction. Now, if you want to explain the entire phenomena, okay, it's even though it's a single phenomena, it involves various parts in it and various principles, various laws of physics to be applied to understand the complete motion of that, right? So reduction is basically an attempt to derive the properties of bigger and more complex phenomena. Okay, this time it's going to be bigger and more complex phenomena from the properties and interactions of its simple parts using various laws. So here the phenomena will be one, and that phenomena is going to be complex. When I say complex, it should involve various simple parts in it, and all those parts will have their own properties and they will interact with each other. Those interactions and properties of those simple parts of that big complex system will shall be explained using various laws of physics. So taking the example of train itself, the engine of the train, when I say engine of the train, it involves thermodynamics to be applied there, right? Because it is the interaction of heat. Taking the example of steam engine itself, you should heat the water, then the water should be pushed to the piston. The steam is pushed to the piston, and the rotation of wheels happens. So various simple parts. So when I say train engine, it involves various simple parts, right? Wheels, all those levers, and the fuel, the water, and the steam generated, the pipes, and the channels, all those pistons. It involves various parts, brakes, everything, horn, everything. They're all different parts, different simple parts connected with each other. And if you want to understand the motion of engine completely, you should understand the properties of each simple part, which shall be explained using different laws of physics, like the heating effect and the evaporation is explained using thermal properties, and the wheels, the rotation of wheels, all those things, braking, shall be explained using mechanics. And when I say application of brakes, it involves friction, and horn involves sound or sound waves. So like this, when I say a complex phenomena, it involves various parts where each part has its own principle or its own property, which shall be explained using a law of physics. So many parts interacting with each other, and each part has its own property, and that property shall be explained using a law of physics. Now, when we understand the laws of all the properties of all the parts, okay, all individual parts, then we can have the complete picture of the engine. We can understand the complete complete property of the engine itself, right? So this is the reverse way. Here it's going to be one phenomena explained using many laws, right? Many laws of physics shall be employed here to understand as one bigger and complex phenomena. Okay, so these are the two thrust principles in physics. Next, in physics we have two domains. So what are domains? Domains are looking into the phenomena in different scales. Like one of the domain is macroscopic domain. When I say macroscopic domain, we are going to take the phenomena in macroscopic scale, bigger scale, and try to understand them, like motion of a car or motion of a ball on the floor or thrown into air, motion of a rocket. Whatever we do in lab and the experiments that we do in lab, the terrestrial observations, terrestrial means what happens on the earth, okay, the ground, what we observe, the phenomena, we try to explain them using the laws of physics, and astronomical phenomena like motion of planets and the formation of stars, all those things, all of them, okay, right from what we do in the lab, all those experiments that we did during bridge course, all of them, and what happens on the earth, like fall of objects, motion of objects, blowing wind, all those things, and along with that astronomical phenomena, okay, like motion of planets and rotation of planets, um, formation of stars, death of stars, black holes, etc., etc. All those things come under macroscopic domain, where we take the uh, phenomena happening in a bigger scale, okay, in a bigger and understandable scale, which can be viewed from our eyes, naked eyes itself. We can observe all those phenomena using our eyes and try to explain them. Basically, the thing is, in this domain, we are going to consider the phenomena happening in bigger scale, larger scale, okay. So that is macroscopic domain. And the microscopic domain involves, micro means you might take into mind, means small, very small, okay. We are going to look deep into a particular substance. What is every substance made up of? It is made up of atoms. What is atom made up of? Nuclei and electrons. What is nuclei made up of? Nucleus made up of? Nucleus is made up of protons and neutrons. What is proton and neutron made up of? They are made up of quarks. This is the domain, the microscopic domain, where we study the structure and the interactions of atoms, electrons, nuclei, and other subatomic particles. So here, when I say micro, it is the study is about very minute, small particles, very, very small particles, which are not visible to our naked eyes. So I hope you are clear with the two domains, macroscopic domain and microscopic domain. Macroscopic domain involves the study of objects or phenomena in bigger scale, larger scale, all those things that we do in lab, terrestrial and astronomical. Microscopic is where we deal with this structure and interactions of small particles like atoms, nuclei, electrons, etc. Right? When I take gas, what is gas made up of? Gas is basically the motion of or the random motion of molecules or atoms, right? So we study the interaction between them. Even when I take a single atom, I study the interaction between the revolving electron and the nucleus, right? So there, in this domain, we are going to discuss things or understand things in a very detailed and small, a very detailed way, considering very small particles like atoms, electrons, nuclei, etc. Right? I hope you're clear. This is about larger phenomena, the phenomena in larger scale, And this is about phenomena in smaller scale. Okay. So far we discussed about the two thrust principles in physics and two domains in physics. So now let us go ahead to the range of physics which we study when in physics, the range that we are going to study, because physics involves the broadest range possible. Because when I say biology, it involves the study which starts from DNA, right? But in physics, we are going to look deep into DNA. What is DNA made up of? Finally, it is made up of atoms and molecules. So, what is atoms and molecule made up of? So, there we stop actually. When I say atoms and molecules, even that can be explained or studied in chemistry, but that's the end of chemistry. Then we go deep into the atom, the structure of atom, right? The motion of electrons and all. What is the size of electron, charge of electron, and what is there in the center of atom, the nucleus. What is nucleus made up of? Nuclei, protons, neutrons, etc., etc. So here, physics is the branch of science which covers the broadest possible things when I take length, time, and mass. So when I take length, the smallest possible phenomena, the study of smallest thing to the largest one. So the length range in physics involves the study of particles and phenomena which are in the range of 10 to the power of minus 14 meter to 10 to the power of 26 meter. What is this length? This length is actually close to the size of a proton, right? So which is very, very, very small. Okay, proton is a very small particle, and we are going to study that particle in physics. So the length range that we start with is 10 to the power of minus 14 meters, the smallest range, to 10 to the power of 26. Okay, minus 14 to 10 to the power of 26 plus 26 meter, which is the length of our entire universe. Okay, just try to imagine how big our universe is. You take Earth, the entire Earth you take, the entire Earth is a planet, a small planet in the big solar system. And our solar system is mainly dominant or held by the sun, which is the star of our solar system. So our sun is a single star, is a star in the ocean of stars. There are plenty, millions and millions of stars in the galaxy, right? Which is our galaxy, Milky Way. And there are billions of galaxies in the existing universe, in the universe that we have. So the universe is too wide to imagine. Okay, it's too wide to imagine. From the smallest of smallest length to the biggest of biggest length we study in physics. And the biggest length possible as of current observation is 10 to the power of 26 meter. 10 followed by 26 zeros. You put that much zeros, that is the length of the universe currently that we know. So that is the length range, small to the large, 10 to the power of minus 14 meter to 10 to the power of 26 meter. And coming to time range, what is the range of time that we study in physics? The range of time that we study is 10 to the power of minus 22 second. Okay, it's a very small time, like when we say fraction of a second. Okay, so that is like one tenth of a second, 0.1 second, 0.01 second. Fine, that is observable, but this time is too small to observe. 0.000022 zeros followed by 1. That small is the range of that time. Okay, so 10 to the power of minus 22 seconds to 10 to the power of plus 18 second, 10 followed by 18 second. You take few 10 to the power of 4 or 5, 4 somewhere around that, 4 or 5, the lifetime of a human being will end. You take one more zero or two more zeros, a century, a millennium will be gone. You take few more zeros, you observe that you can take the age of planets itself, and you take few more zeros, then you take the age of sun, age of stars. What is this 10 to the power of 18 seconds shows? This is the uh, age of our universe itself. Okay, so we all know that Big Bang theory gave us the idea about the expansion of universe and the age of universe. So this is the largest time possible under the study of physics, which is the age of physics itself. Age of universe itself. So that is the time range. The smallest is 10 to the power of minus 22 seconds. Where do we observe this small time? So we observe this very small time when an atom gets excited, the electron will jump to the higher energy state, and within very small time it comes back. Okay, not only the electrons take even more time. The excited state of nucleus, when we consider, it comes to the ground state emitting certain energy in this short period of time. Okay, so smallest of smallest 10 to the power of minus 22 second to the biggest of biggest time 10 to the power of 18 seconds. Next is range of mass. So what is the smallest mass that we can observe or study in physics? That's mass of electron. Okay. Mass of an electron is the smallest mass that we can study and observe in physics, which is 10 to the power of minus 30 kg. 10 to the power of minus 30. Small mass, very small mass. And then you take the mass of the entire universe, mass of entire universe. Okay, yeah, you cannot measure it using the regular apparatus and all. No one can put the entire universe onto a scale and measure, weighing scale and measure it. They're all done using the theoretical calculations, but that's fine. This is the current value of the mass of entire universe. You take all the mass in the universe, that mass is 10 to the power of 55 kg. Okay, so range of mass is 10 to the power of minus 30 kg to 10 to the power of 55 kg plus 55 kg. Okay, from the mass of electron to the mass of entire universe. What comes in between? You take electron, then comes the mass of atom, then comes mass of say a cell. Okay, a cell in biology, or even the smaller things like nucleus, and then you come to like something like a grand sand grain. Okay, a single sand grain. Then you take a stone, a small stone. Then you can take something like a block of ice, a big block of ice. Then you can take something like an entire building. Then you can take something like ocean of water. Okay, then you can take something like entire earth's mass, then the entire solar system mass, then the entire mass of our galaxy, then the entire mass of universe. Okay, that those things are all those other masses will be coming in between these two. Okay, so that is about mass range in physics. Okay, now we shall see the four fundamental forces in nature. What is this fundamental force? See, in nature we see many kind of forces, right? A falling object is due to the gravitational force, we know that. And when I push certain object, it moves, right? So I apply certain force, that is the mechanical force, or I can also say that as applied force. Now, upon the application of brakes, a car stops. There it is frictional force, right? And we also have, if I have a thread and stretch it, tension force exists in the string. And we also have various other kinds of forces like spring force. I take a spring, stretch it or compress it, there spring force comes. So in nature we observe various kinds of forces, but when we look deep, we see four basic forces which gives rise to all these different forces. Okay, so if we understand these four fundamental forces, we can understand all other forces perfectly. So let us see which are the four fundamental forces. The first is gravitational force. We all know that every object in the universe is attracted to the other object, right? Like a falling object is due to the force of attraction between the object and the earth, right? Earth pulls it down. And similarly, the force between moon and the earth, that is again gravitational force responsible. You take sun and earth, again it is gravitational force between them. So like this, uh, any objects, any two object in the universe, okay, all the objects in the universe are attracted using gravitational force. Next, we'll come to this part later. Let us see the other forces. Next force that we have is electromagnetic force. So as the word itself says, electromagnetic, it involves all the electric and magnetic forces, which we will then get to know that both electric and magnetic forces are due to the interaction of charged particles. Okay, so we basically have two kinds of charged particles: positively charged particles, negatively charged particles. When those particles interact with each other, then electromagnetic force comes. So you take frictional force. There it is the electrons of one atom interact one object in of certain atom in one of the object interacting with the electrons in the atom of the other object. Okay, so that is what is frictional force. Similarly, you take tension force, you take spring force, all the forces that we see, the more maximum forces that we see other than gravitational force in nature regularly are all due to the electromagnetic force. Okay, the fundamental force which is responsible for all those forces, the tension force, frictional force, and electrostatic force, magnetic force, right? You all know that two magnets attract each other and repel each other. And also the spring force, all those forces are basically due to the electromagnetic force itself. Okay. Next is strong nuclear force. So this force is not is not observable by us in our daily life. So this strong nuclear force exists inside the atom, inside the nucleus. See, when I take nucleus is made up of still smaller particles called protons and neutrons. These protons and neutrons are held with the strongest force in nature inside the nucleus, which is called strong nuclear force. Okay, understood where we see strong nuclear force. Strong nuclear force is only seen inside the nucleus of the atom. So next is weak nuclear force. Where do we see weak nuclear force? We see weak nuclear force when an atom becomes radioactive. Okay, there are many radioactive substances. During radioactive decay, particularly there is a decay called beta decay. In beta decay, we see electrons and neutrinos coming out. Okay, sometimes antineutrinos, positron, but the basic particles are electrons, neutrinos, and antineutrinos. These are the particles which come out during radioactive decay. And these particles, the electrons, neutrinos, exchange a kind of force which is called weak nuclear force. Okay. Again, this weak nuclear force cannot be observed in our day-to-day life. Okay. It can only be observed during a beta decay. Okay, yeah, nothing to worry about what is beta decay, how beta decay happens. We will understand all of them by the end of your PUC. Most of the forces we will understand all these three we will understand during the second year, but gravitational force we will understand this year itself. Okay, don't need to worry, you just memorize them or get to know what are the different forces, where do they exist. But we will discuss each force in detailedly in the coming sessions and the next year. So, what is necessary to have gravitational force? It's only two objects, irrespective of their temperature, charge, any other or state. There exists gravitational force between any two objects in the universe. Any two objects in the universe exchange gravitational force. And in order to have electromagnetic force, we must have charged particles, either positive and or negative. We must have charged particles to have electromagnetic force. Then we have strong nuclear force, which can be seen inside the atom, inside the nucleus, and the particles inside the nucleus, which are proton and neutron, together are called nucleons. So, this strong nuclear force can be seen exchanging between two nucleons, which means between two protons, or a proton and neutron, or neutron and neutron. Okay, that is what is strong nuclear force. That is where we see strong nuclear force. And as I said, weak nuclear force can be seen in the particles emitted during beta decay. Okay, so this is about among which bodies or particles does these forces can be observed. Next is the relative strength, or it's about which is the strongest force, weakest force, and then what is the order of force that we see in these forces. So, when I take two particles of certain charge and body mass, okay, now we need to consider two particles of unit charge or unit mass, separate them by certain distance, and then we see that electromagnetic force, okay, is much stronger compared to gravitational force. See, strong nuclear force is the strongest force. Okay, strong nuclear force is the strongest force in nature, whose relative strength is taken as 1, and all of them are lesser than the strong nuclear force. So, after strong nuclear force, what we have is electromagnetic force. So, electromagnetic force is 100 times less effective than when we compare it to strong nuclear force. Getting the idea? Strong nuclear force, strongest force. Then electromagnetic force is 100 times less effective compared to strong nuclear force. That is why relative strength is 10 to the power of minus 2. And then it comes weak nuclear force, which is 10 to the power of 13 times lesser than strong nuclear force. Okay, it is always compared to strong nuclear force. Okay, so it is 10 to the power of minus 13 times the strong nuclear force, or in other words, 10 to the power of 13 times lesser than strong nuclear force. Okay, so similarly, gravitational force is the weakest force in nature. Okay, strongest, strong. Okay, with this we can consider strong, weak, weakest. Getting strongest force, weak, strong force, weak force, weakest force. That's how we can put that. But the main two things that we should remember is which is the strongest force, which is the weakest force. Strongest force is strong nuclear force, weakest force is gravitational force. Okay, it is not weak nuclear, it is gravitational force, which is the weakest force in nature. And this has the relative strength of 10 to the power of minus 39 compared to strong nuclear force. So, it is 10 to the power of 39 times lesser effective compared to strong nuclear force. Okay. So, that is about order of their strength. Okay. Strongest, weakest. Gravitational force is weakest, strong nuclear force is strongest force in nature. Next is okay, so this is range of force. Just a minute, let me write the range in nature. Yeah. Next is range of forces, which means the distance through which these forces can exchange between two bodies. Okay. So when I take gravitational force, the range of gravitational force is infinite. Okay. Very large distances, gravitational force can exchange between two bodies with infinite distance between them. Like some black hole at the center of our galaxy is controlling our sun, right? So it's infinite distance, which is infinite distance can be overcome to apply gravitational force to the other body. And similarly, even the electromagnetic force is also infinite in range. So you can think that, okay, no, that is what that is not what we observe in nature, right? Because what we observe in nature is, you take two magnets, you hold them close, then they will attract. You hold one here, the other here, they won't attract. So it's not infinite. That's how you might think. So there exists force between those two particles, those two magnets kept in large distance, but the other force dominate them for the attraction of magnetic force to be observed. Okay, like if I keep one magnet here, the other magnet here, they won't come closer. Reason? Because the surface on which the magnets are kept are acted upon by the frictional force. So that is why they cannot attract. But you bring them close, when they overcome the frictional force, they attract. But the best example for the infinite range of electromagnetic force is the propagation of electromagnetic radiations. What are electromagnetic radiations? There are many electromagnetic radiations. Light is one electromagnetic radiation. You can observe light coming from stars, which are almost at infinite distance. Okay, infinite distance, reaching the earth. You can observe them during night. So they are electromagnetic radiations traveling infinite distance, right, in the space. So that is why we say electromagnetic force is infinite in range. It can travel infinite distance or exchange between two bodies of infinite distance. Next is strong nuclear force. Strong nuclear force is short force which can be seen only inside the nucleus. Okay, inside the nucleus. So the range is same as of the size of the nucleus. The average size of the nucleus is 10 to the power of minus 15 meter. Okay, so 10 to the power of minus 15 meter is the range of strong nuclear force. Then we have weak nuclear force, which is still very short, subnuclear in size. Okay, it acts inside the proton and inside neutron like that. So the range is still smaller, which is 10 to the power of minus 16 meter. 10 to the power of minus 16 meter is the range of weak nuclear force, which means literally when I say 10 to the power of minus 15 meter is the range of strong nuclear force, if you separate two nucleons, two particles by a distance more than 10 to the power of minus 15 meter, then no strong nuclear force acts between them. There will be no strong nuclear force between them if they are separated by a distance more than 10 to the power of minus 15 meter. Okay. Similarly, the weak nuclear force, they should be within a distance of 10 to the power of minus 16 meter, very small distance. Next is the nature of force. Gravitational force is only attractive. Okay, gravitational force, you can observe it very easily. Two bodies will never repel each other using gravitational force. When I say gravitational force, it's only attractive in nature. Okay, and then electromagnetic force. Electromagnetic force is both attractive and repulsive. Okay, just take the example of magnets. You can observe that like poles of a magnet repel, unlike poles of a magnet attract. So electromagnetic force is both attractive and repulsive. You take strong nuclear force. Strong nuclear force is again only attractive force. Okay, so two protons only attract inside the nucleus using strong nuclear force. Okay, so and finally weak nuclear force is both attractive and repulsive. That is the nature of weak nuclear force. Using weak nuclear force, two particles can be attracted and can be repelled. Okay, so that is about the four fundamental forces, which is the strongest, strong nuclear, weakest, gravitational force, their relative strength, the objects among which they interact, the range, nature of the force. Okay, so this is about the first chapter. And one more thing that we are left with is different inventions and discoveries done by different scientists of different countries. Okay, we will see them. The list is important, the names and the discoveries, and this is the forces. These are the forces.